Hey everyone, I'm going to try something a little different today. We're just going to go through one game today from the ManaTraders series. Uh, it was a feature match, so you can actually also go watch commentary on it if you want on the ManaTraders Twitch or YouTube page. It was a pretty interesting match, and it's one of Depth's harder matchups in Death and Taxes. So I thought it would be useful to go through. And I managed to rope one of the absolute best Death and Taxes pilots, John Ryan Hamilton, into doing this with me. Some of you may know him better as xJCloud from losing to him infinitely on Magic the Gathering Online. So, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. I think this matchup's really interesting, despite how obviously lopsided it may feel to a lot of Depth's players. From the Death and Taxes side, it always feels like you're walking a super, super small tightrope. So I like analyzing these matches a lot.
Yeah, I think it's always worth going through, and I think one mistake on either side is basically game ending in a lot of spots. And in particular, it's taken a new twist just due to the pretty pretty big change to Death and Taxes by adding 20 new cards that you guys have done with the companion version, the Yorion version. So, how do you think that changes the matchup?
I'm not gonna lie, it's not good for it's not good for Death and Taxes for the Depth matchup specifically. One of my big arguments for Yorion is that your key cards are a lot less key lately, but in this matchup, that's just absolutely not true. Your Wastelands and your Caracases and your Swords of Plowshares are your flat out most important cards, and your other cards are a lot worse. So a lot of these filler cards don't matter as much.
Yeah, that seems fair. I think you kind of get away with the Caracas since 3 and 60 and 4 and 80 is basically more or less the same math. But yeah, the Wasteland in particular is where I think the real punish comes in. You sort of get away with the plow a little bit too by adding some paths. So the math is at least reasonable, but Wastelands and Flicker Wisps being reduced, I think, is the two spots that I've noticed in some of the games.
It's not always bad. There are like a small subset of games that I lose to depths where you get Thoughtseize like 3 times and you do go to like turn 8 or 9 or whatever, and the Orient can come into play at those points as just being a big creature to end the game with, as well as like having flying. But most of the games I lose to depths are because I die on like turn 3 or whatever.
Yeah, so I know we've personally talked about it before, but for anybody watching this that hasn't seen any of like Twitter conversations or anything like that, what do you think the general approach should be for a Death and Taxes pilot to the matchup?
Um, like I said before, Death and Taxes, you're just walking the world's smallest tightrope trying to fight depths. You have all the tools to win the match a lot of the time. You just have to make sure that you don't mess up. One tiny, tiny mistake can cost you the whole game very easily. You basically want to just be holding up as much of your defenses as possible every turn in order to not die. That means like when you're on the draw, Wasteland go instead of turn one Aether Vial a lot, so you don't just like die to a turn 2 Merit Lage plus a Not of This World. Just don't just you never tap out unless you absolutely have to, or unless you're absolutely certain that you can't get 2020'd. Just you need to hold up as many shields as possible. You'll win the game in the long term most of the time.
Yeah, I think the number one that pretty much wraps into a nice little gift box and bow. The number one mistake I see people make against me when they are newer to Death and Taxes is they will just play a turn one Ether Vial on the draw, or they will on the play tap out for a turn Stoneforge Mystic, turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic, just assuming that their turn 3 answer, whether that's Plow or Karaka, if they have one answer, just assuming it's good enough, and then they just get blown out by Crop Step or Not of This World or any number of other, well, nowadays Stifle if the answer is Caracas. So there's just a lot of ways to die early, and there's generally no need to risk it. The longer the game goes, in my opinion, the more favored DNT is.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we'll just jump into this match. So for anyone that wants to, this was actually double streamed. I didn't stream, but my side was covered from the ManaTraders stream, and the opponent's Spider Space actually streamed the event as well. So you can find his VOD on Twitch. So if there's any point that you want to see his thought process on his decisions, you can also do that. If you want to see two independent commentators' thoughts besides this, you can see that. There's going to be a lot of different ways to watch this particular game if you choose to. So this hand is for depths is just a no-brainer keep no matter in the dark, no matter what it is. This was an open deck list event, so I did know my opponent was on D&T. Even if they were on the 60-card D&T version, I would have known. But the Urion reveal plus open deck lists, so this is pretty hard to get a better hand than this for depths outside of having Vampire Hexmage. So it doesn't have or like a Lotus Petal. So it doesn't have the clean turn 2 2020, but it is a turn 3, and it's got the intro discard spell on turn 1. It's got crop rotation if we need to slow down. You have a secondary protection in addition to the Not of This World. So I think this is as no-brainer of a keep. And I'm assuming as a Death and Taxes pilot, if you knew your Depth's opponent's hand was this, you wouldn't be particularly thrilled.
Yeah, definitely not.
So basically, there's really not a whole lot of decision making here until you actually see that the D&T pilot's hand was pretty much as good as mine. So if you were sitting in the Death and Taxes seat, what would you be least thrilled about losing in this spot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a good keep. Caracas plus Wasteland plus Plow is very, very good. I, in general, am not great at guessing some of these thought seizes sometimes because as a not experienced depths player, I'm not good at prioritizing like what the important cards are. But I can buy an argument for taking Stoneforge here just because you have a lot of tools to fight through stuff like Caracas and Plow already, and just by taking the Stoneforge, you buy yourself a bunch of time. You don't want to let your opponent get over 20 life by Stoneforging for Batterskull or something in these early turns if you can't punch through with your 2020. So I think especially knowing that these cards are here with this Thoughtseize makes them a little bit easier to play through. And I don't think taking the Plow is a very good option just because there are already all these other tools that are stopping you.
Okay. So the thought process for me on the depth side was that I didn't think there was going to be a way that Stoneforge was going to be basically active until turn 4. So if you take the Plow and they play the Stoneforge Mystic at any point with only one piece of protection up, they die. So it can't be hard cast. If we leave the Vial in hand, the Vial has to go up to 2, so it can come in on our third end step. So the equipment's not coming in until the 4th turn at the earliest. So theoretically, and they can't tap out for like Jit and Equip either without risking being in a really bad spot. So the life gain aspect of Mystic was going to be turn 4 or later, even with Batterskull. So given that I had 2 pieces of protection in that turn window, I didn't think the Stoneforge Mystic was going to be able to get there. So the call from me was between the Vial and the Plow. And I think it really depends based on future draw steps. I think one of the bigger issues with this hand now is beating. If you leave the Plow, you have to beat 2 pieces of interaction. So at any point, if we take the Stoneforge Mystic, the Vial's ticking up, they're never going to tap mana. So we have to beat Wasteland, Caracas, and Plow all in the same turn. And that's just really hard to do. Our hand can't currently do that. We could draw additional discard, theoretically. We could draw another Not of This World. It's not like we don't have outs to it, but we can't actually currently beat all 3 pieces of those interaction. So I was torn between taking the Vial and cutting off their ability to develop versus taking the Plow.
Interesting. This is why I don't cast Thoughtseize. But I would have never guessed that taking the Aether Vial was a consideration here.
Yeah, so one of the biggest issues from the depth side is, and I know this is an 80-card list, and there's only a handful of Flicker Wisp, like there's only a playset of Flicker Wisp and a handful of Recruiters. But Flicker Wisp is such a problem card because if timed correctly, it requires 2 answers.
Yeah, that's true.
So
one of my main plans is like if you have a Vial and you get to a Vial on 3, you just feel so much safer because Flicker Wisp demands the answer to the trigger, and then also you have to attack for a flyer.
Yeah. So basically, what I ended up taking is the Plow. thinking
I don't-
basically
I don't mind that.
under the impression that I can win through the other two cards within the time frame. So if they ever try to make a play, it is really close. I was torn between the vial and the swords, but I ended up taking the swords. So now we're fully aware of the Death and Taxes player's hand. So they end up playing just the real super obvious Plains Vial. Do you think there's an argument for, in the face of Urgorberg, playing the Wasteland there?
Wasteland yeah, there's definitely an argument for it. Like, if you just have Hexmage Not of This World, you just lose, right? If anything, you want to play, like, I guess playing the Wasteland or the Caracas into the battle doesn't matter, because the Wasteland doesn't come into play at that point, because the 2020 is already in play. But yeah, I'm not even sure I like turn one vial here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it did make it alive, which is another part of the argument for taking the Plow last turn, is if they make this play, we're drawing 12 cards to kill them, because any Hexmage off the top kills them, any Lotus Petal off the top is a combo with the crop rotation, and same with any Spirit Guide. So, yeah, gave a window there. Second crop rotation did not do it. From the depth side here, it's tempting to just kind of like farm out your combo or Borg stage depths. But given that we know they have a Wasteland, I don't think there's any reason to do that. We even have a second copy of crop rotation, so if they give us a window to combo with Not of This World protection, we could just use the second crop rotation without any worry. So I think to protect against them, just firing off a Wasteland, I think the mana complements is the land drop there.
Yeah, makes sense.
So just to give you full information, I did go through Spider Space's stream, so I can let you know their draw steps, so there wasn't any hidden information. Their draw step for the first turn was a second copy of Caracas, and for the second turn was a basic Plains.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. And they just say go.
Yep. So this is part of the problem with leaving the vial in the hand, is they don't actually have to commit to anything. Hold on just a second. So Gemstone Mine on the depth side doesn't actually particularly matter, except in this situation where we try to get both crops live. So I think we play the least threatening land and pass. It's the most obvious crop rotation of all time, but yeah.
Just make sure your opponent doesn't randomly tap out for no reason and die.
Yeah. So here the opponent was actually flooding a bit. So they drew another Plains. So their draw steps for the match so far were Caracas Plains. Obviously, I didn't have that information at the time, but
yeah.
So they didn't really they weren't incentivized to play the Mystic at all. It comes into play for free and step off the vial.
I'm holding up everything right now.
So pretty easy depths pass from the depth side here. So what piece of equipment do you generally go for in this spot?
This feels like an easy batter skull. Like I was talking about earlier, value in getting over 20 life is a pretty big deal, and you never want to be like tapping super low or anything. So just being able to, I mean, looking at my hand of what is it, second Plains, second Caracas, I think a third Plains.
Yeah, it's
right now.
Yep, it's all land.
Yeah, like I just want to say Plains go next turn and hold up Caracas Wasteland and just put in the batter skull.
Okay, so the opponent did not choose to do that. They went
to Famine. Yeah, that would be my second guess, but I'm not a fan of this.
Yeah, so oddly enough, this got me to make what I think is I wouldn't say a big mistake, but this got me to make a mistake. If they had have gotten the batter skull there, that would have really incentivized me to go for it here. So on their end step, I would have cropped into Wasteland, wasted their Wasteland, and then comboed Not of This World at the Caracas and accepted my fate if one of their 3 draw steps was Flicker Wisp, Path, or Plow. But since they got the Sword of Feast and Famine, I have the double crop and the Gemstone Mine, and I kind of talked myself into being able to beat everything. Like, why would I go for it here and just lose to a Plow or a Path when I can just take one more turn and have both beat? Was where I ended up. Whereas if they had the I don't know if they were thinking this, but if the Batterskull's there threatening to put them to 24 life and then making me win through multiple Caracas activations, I don't think I would have had a choice but to go for it there.
I wonder if you're supposed to read grabbing Feast and Famine as already has like drew the life like a GTA or a Batterskull.
Yeah, that's also possible. So they drew Recruiter for the turn.
That's a good one.
In this spot, yeah. So they elected to keep the Caracas and the Wasteland up as opposed to recruitering for Flicker Wisp and leaving Flicker Wisp off Vial. Up for Vial. Do you agree with that?
How comfortable do I feel here? We have 2 pieces of protection versus the combo on table. So we are clearly dead to a crop rotation plus Not of This World. But like, we're also dead to well, I guess we're not necessarily dead to crop rotation plus Not of This World if we tap for Recruiter. Yeah, so basically my thought process is always what affords me the least possible chance of dying on any given turn. So need to think through, does recruiting Flicker Wisp here beat crop rotation Not of This World? And I actually don't think it doesn't beat this hand, I don't think, because we have double crop rotation, but
it actually does. So I think if you time it, maybe I'm wrong, but if you time it where you just play it now and you leave one piece of interaction up, it doesn't really matter because of the crop rotation. So you leave Wasteland or Caracas up, and you have the Flicker Wisp in hand. I have to crop route for the Wasteland to get rid of whichever land was still untapped.
Mm-hmm.
And on the end step, still activate the Vial, put the Flicker Wisp in. No, I guess that does beat both, yeah.
Yeah, because then you target it, and then you can Not of This World the target, and then untap and use the crop route for a step and kill them.
Yeah, so there's no difference.
But doing that would be a single crop rotation plus Not of This World, which just currently on board we're dead to.
Yeah.
Notably, though, that does not give us the ability to also just put in like our sort of Feast and Famine here. Like there's argument for if we did have this Batterskull or something, and we like they cushion to get to 24 here is a big thing. So I might try to like lean on double interaction plus the ability to get over 24. But given that we have sort of Feast and Famine in our hand instead, I'm less keen on that. But we're just diverging so much from the choices that I would have taken already. That
Fair enough. Okay, so they elected to pass the turn here. In retrospect, I'm still not 100% sure what the correct play is. Had I gone for it here, I would have won the game. I did not. I got into the mental. I'm kind of a conservative player by nature, and just looking at the board in the hand and just talking myself into it. Like there's 10 outs. There's an additional 3 plows after the one that was discarded, and then another 3 paths and the 4 Flicker Wisps. So it's 10 outs, and they had 3 draw steps out of 68, 69, and 70 cards. So I think, just based on the math, I'm a favorite to win from going, but not a huge one.
Yeah, and I can definitely buy that, because with this second crop rotation in hand and them not having the ability to go over 20 next turn because they grabbed Sword, there's definitely like the writing on the wall of, okay, I can beat this like a Flicker Wisp or a Plow if I just wait a turn, right?
Yeah, so that's where I talked myself into it. It just gets so much worse if they drew exactly like if they draw a second Wasteland, it gets so much worse. If they draw the Recruiter like they did, it gets a lot worse. But I think it's tight. I think if I absolutely was forced to say, I think I probably should have gone for it, but I think it's really close. So now I could pass with both crop rotations up or play the Hex Mage. And this is where I started to go down the rabbit hole of trying to beat everything. So my thought process was, with the Hex Mage in play, if they do anything that taps down, I still have double crop rotation up with the Hex Mage. If they don't, I can set up a scenario where I can take the counters off the vial with the Hex Mage in any kind of like back and forth stack sequence over the course of 2 turns. And that's probably also a little bit too conservative, but that's where my head was when I made this play. So I gave a few seconds of thought as to whether to take the counters off here, but I think that's I don't think that's a realistic option.
Yeah, I had a similar thought.
Yeah, that gives them a free turn knowing that the Wasteland has the combo locked out.
Yeah, especially with the Sword of Feast and Famine in hand coming down, it starts to spiral pretty badly.
Yep, so they do exactly that. They Recruiter for Flicker Wisp and Vial in this Sword of Feast and Famine. So they shoot up the Mystic and crash in with that, which seems pretty straightforward to me.
There's a play that I'm waiting to see if they do.
Okay. So discarding the depths is pretty straightforward. The second depths is not going to matter in this particular game.
Put Yorion in their hand?
Yeah. So what would you have done in that spot?
I was thinking about casting Flicker Wisp.
Yeah. Just what? Flicker Wisp?
Yeah, cast Flicker Wisp on Recruiter and get another Wisp. Just gives you just a bunch of additional stuff. It puts the flyer in play and keeps this other Flicker Wisp in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think they eventually do that off the vial, but yeah, this would have given them double.
Yeah, I guess double Wisp does about as much as single Wisp in terms of blocking a Marital Age, but
yeah. So in this spot, there's no opportunity to go for it with the known 3 answers between hand and board. So Sylvan Scrying is not where we want to be in this particular spot. So
we do have 3 answers here to 3 things. There consideration to popping the vial now?
Yeah. So
because we are sitting on Marital Age plus 3 answers, right?
Yeah. So part of it is we have to work our way through Flyer plus Wasteland plus Caracas. So if we get rid of the Hex Mage,
because we have enough mana to crop rotation. Do we have two? We have 2 Wastelands in the deck or something, right?
There's one. There's one Wasteland.
Things. One? Oh, okay, that makes this harder.
Yeah.
I was thinking both these crop rotations could answer the Caracas and the Wasteland. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. So.
Well, I guess you crop rotate Wasteland, Not of This World Caracas, and crop rotate for Step, which is still would beat a Sorcery Speed Wisp plus Caracas plus Wasteland. Doesn't beat Plow though, but I don't know.
So
yes.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't think the second Flicker Wisp doesn't actually matter. Blocking's not going to be what decides this game.
Yeah, I
So
mostly just want to take the ability for the opponent to make instant speed flicker wisps off the table.
yeah, so the real question is whether the first one matters or not. And if it doesn't,
okay, yeah, I suppose you could just do it later because the first one doesn't necessarily matter.
It can matter.
Yeah,
but
can't matter if they don't have another land. They cast the wisp next turn. They can't hold up like a Plow Caracas Wasteland.
Yeah, I think the thought was I just wanted to keep my options open as far as how I want to play around Wasteland, because the Hex Mage could still, if I decide it's easier to beat the Vial activation than it is the Wasteland, you can use the old double activation with the Hex Mage in the stage to get through the Wasteland that way without using your Wasteland there. And then
Okay, yeah, that's
Wasteland
true.
on the Caracas. There's optionality, but there's definitely an argument to be made for hitting the Vial there. I'm hitting the OK button. Every time I go through a replay, I do that at least once.
This just gets infinite flicker wisps, sure.
Yep. So that was the final punish right there for taking it as slow as I did with the second Wasteland off the top. So one of the other max punishes for if I had have taken the counters off the Vial with the Hex Mage was exactly this, was a second Wasteland, which we could not beat at all at that point. Knowing their hand now, they also had a second Caracas too, so taking a line where we went for it during their upkeep would have been disastrous for a variety of reasons. So that wasn't really an option either. So from here, we don't really have a choice. The sword has to go, or the scrying has to go. So now we're in a spot where we're kind of just forced to go. They're more or less going to be attacking for lethal next turn, and there's just no way I can make a flying blocker during their attack step with what's going to be for sure another Flicker Wisp that they could then sorcery speed in hand. So we're kind of locked in. So the only way to really start this is I have to force the action on their Wastelands. So I Wasteland their Wasteland. What do you think the right response to this is from the D&T side?
You just have to fire off this Wasteland at something. So you're, with only 2 cards left in hand, you're guaranteed to survive. The question is, like, what are you dying to after that? So probably am just Wastelanding the... I don't know what I would Wasteland here. Gut feeling is the easy decision is just like Wasteland the depths to force my opponent to go for it because you have so many shields up. Like, you literally have more shields than your opponent has cards in hand. So at that point, if you force the action, you should come out on top.
Okay. That seems reasonable to me. So my opponent made a really interesting play here that I did not expect. They pointed it at the stage, which is kind of heads up because it sort of it sort of does the same thing as what you were saying, except it puts me in a really awkward spot because you can't stage combo first because that shuts off the Hex Mage's ability to combo.
Mm-hmm.
They just let the stage resolve and then waste the stage, and you can't do anything because it already has no counters as adepts. So I liked that line from the opponent. I thought that was really heads up.
Yeah, that is a smart line. Does the same thing but better.
Yeah, and I can't think of a time where an opponent's actually done that, so it kind of threw me for a little bit. Yeah. So kind of put me into a spot where I had to use the Hex Mage anyway. So what would you do in this spot?
Just Wasteland the... Wait, you can't just Wasteland the depths because then the stage happens. But you also can't... I don't know how much you want to drag your opponent's resources down. Your opponent still has 2 cards in hand. You have Caracas and Wisp as 2 answers. So you're still feeling pretty good here. Tempting to wasteland the confluence to try to suss out crop rotation.
Yeah, so I thought that might be a play too. The opponent, again, for the second straight decision, made a play that really surprised me, that I thought was really good. It's kind of a variation of your play. They just let it happen. So I was kind of thrown off by that a little bit. So at that point, the rest of the stack just needs to go. I could float a black off of the stage, but that actually doesn't matter in this spot, since it's going to die anyway. So they fire off the Caracas, at which point I have no choice but to Not of This World.
Yeah, and then you can just wasteland the mana confluence and wisp safely.
And that's exactly what they did. Yep. So I thought that was really well sequenced by the opponent in that spot.
Yeah.
So
I think it plays out similarly whether you wasteland there or at the while everything's on the stack. I don't know if there's an optimal choice of when to fire it off, but I suppose it gives you more information if you just wait. But
yeah, so I was impressed by the way they sequenced that last turn. I don't know what I thought about the sort of the feast and famine play, but it definitely took the game in a different direction than where it would have gone. And I'd be interested. I'll probably actually reach out to them and ask, or go back and take a look at the stream, see if they mentioned it specifically for what the reasoning was behind getting this, because if they actually thought that out and be like, well, oh, he'll go for it if I get this, that would have been really heads up too. I'd be impressed by that. But yeah, I don't know. I thought they played really, really well here, and we can't go through game two because in game two I was pretty sure I had that one and I misclicked through a wasteland with a stifle, so we're not gonna relive that massacre. So yeah, this was pretty quick. You have any other last second thoughts on it?
No, yeah, Spider played really well. I am curious about the sort of feast and famine decision or not. I can't imagine that your decision was, I don't want my opponent to go for it next turn when I have like double answer up in case my opponent has triple answer but gets like psyched out. And that's like way too high IQ for me.
I mean, maybe it was just as straightforward as if the sort of feast or famine, maybe just valuing the pressure on the hand. Say I have two answers to this. I know I now have the I guess it was before the recruiter draw. So maybe just pressuring the hand to the point where
limiting hand size, meaning you just have to play around straight up less cards.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's certainly not nothing, but I don't know. I highly value getting over 20 life in this matchup when you can, just because affording that one merit liege hit can be super big at like letting you untap Caracas and stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, well, it was good to get your take on the D&T side of things, and yeah, maybe we'll do a matchup series, and I can take a beating again in the future. It's been a couple of years since I let Phil bury me in a few matchups on old school bug depths.
Hey, I made my deck worse against you, and you've made your deck better against me. So maybe it'll be a little bit closer next time.
We're working on it. So I guess that's all for today. If you guys want to check out xJCloud, he's a massive presence on Twitter. So if you're looking to have any future D&T printings, need to be entered into witness protection after he assassinates them, you can do that. You could also go there for all Euro and Oko fan posts, and
I believe please tag me specifically on how great Oko's and Uro's designs are.
Oh, and congratulations on recently ending Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
we got that going too. All right, bye everyone.